And we're live for the final installment of us explaining this thing that you're tired of hearing about. With two very, very special guests, by the way, from the Propaganda Report podcast. We have Monica Perez and Brad Binkley. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Great.
How about you guys?
Yeah, well, I'm feeling particularly honoured to have you guys on. I was listening to your show back in. If any of our listeners don't know who you are, basically back in autumn of 2019, it seems like.
Oh, I think we were chatting back then.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, and you called literally everything that's happened up to this point. When everyone else was still talking about cruise ships.
Yeah.
It's a real honor to have you on, Monica. Thank you very much for coming. And
your name came up in our
awesome.
inaugural episode.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is an honor. Yeah, people have told me that they thought we were crazy coming out like on day one. This thing's gonna last a year, yada yada. And actually, it was only a couple of weeks after that. We were on terrestrial radio. I had the Monica Perez show, and they were just walked to the door. We're like, I guess we were totally right.
Yeah.
I was kind of proof positive. Had to double down at that point, but yeah,
we covered like every conspiracy you can think of. The previous show, like mind control, the Event 201, a little JFK in there, predictive programming, and then the next week it was all right. You guys got to go.
Well, we were doing a podcast anyway, and the executive producer there heard our podcast, and we're like, well, the podcast, great, bring the podcast, like that's what we want to hear. So I was like, oh, totally, no problem. And then the guy above him was just like,
Right,
I think we've had enough of that.
Yeah, was it a thing like that? What happened to that TV station in Oklahoma City?
Oh yeah, the truth tellers that got bought up by the company.
Got sold, and then
they got bought up by the.
It was
New York
that the
Times
station
company.
got sold.
Yeah, because it
was.
It's their tactic.
What's that OKC movie called?
It's called
Noble Lie.
A Noble Lie. Yes,
yeah.
It's with the great
movie.
Alex Jones, by the way, as is interviewed extensively in. But that was one of my first big red pills where, like, I just read about, Ruby Ridge and Waco and stuff. And then I come across this movie and I'm like, what? Because I'm old school.
Yeah.
Well, old school. I'm a young guy. But I mean, I got into the 9/11 truth stuff like in 2004. Like, yeah, that was my first intro. And of course, Alex Jones, David Icke, that kind of stuff. And so when I saw this OKC thing, I was like, oh my God, that was just the trial run.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They had the documents all drawn up and everything. And then there was the World Trade Center 93.
Right.
Yeah.
That had that Imad Salem, this Egyptian guy who was the FBI operative in the cell.
Yeah.
And he recorded the call where he calls his FBI handler and says, what the hell? What did you put real explosives in that for? People died. And the guy was like, I don't know if that's like commonly heard. That I used to have it on my website, and then WordPress took down everything, and like not the words I typed in, but all the media.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't even know if it still exists anymore, but it was very clear they were trying to do that, and that they probably that alone will make you wonder if they did the next one.
Have you read the book Heart of a Soldier? It's I forget who wrote it, but it's available on Amazon, and it's the biography of a guy called Rick Riscola, who was the head of security at Morgan Stanley on the day of 9/11, and it's a complete biography of it. It's very interesting, but in part of that was he and his friend from his Vietnam War buddy had predicted
He was
the
SAS, right?
No, he was U.S. Army or Marines.
Oh, okay. I thought he was the English guy you were talking about.
Yeah, he was English, but
okay.
Yeah, became an American citizen after distinguishing himself in World War II. Mel Gibson played him in a movie called "We Were Soldiers Once and Young," and they
based Mel.
Yeah. And they, so this guy, he got out, but the one guy was still left in the office, and him and another guy went back in, and they were to get him. No, they went back in to do a sweep to make sure all their guys were out, and that was when it fell down, the second one. Anyway, he had predicted the 1993 bombing, and it was after that he says, "Look, the port authority's useless. We have to get the thing out of here." And they signed a lease on a new place in New Jersey, but they had to stay there until their lease was up, which was going to be in a few months' time. But they'd also
I shouldn't even laugh. But
That's funny. Are you from New York, Scott?
No, I'm from Boston.
Oh, so you hate New York?
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan, to be honest.
But yeah, this guy's buddy had converted to Islam and infiltrated the mosques in New York, and they predicted the second one as well. And they told the Port Authority and Morgan Stanley and everybody about it, and that they just didn't do anything about it.
Wonder why.
So yeah, there you go. Yeah.
It's like the FBI always having contact with these shooters that you brought up today, Monica. Every single time there was some interaction with the FBI.
And the Tsarnaevs.
That's what red pilled me. I wasn't red pilled till 2013.
Yeah, well, my sort of route into this was like I didn't pay any attention to it really, but I guess it was before, but just from looking at history, I mean, I don't know whether there's a grand conspiracy or not, but you know, what
hints
just
there is.
Studying various historical events, it brings you to something like the Rhodes pill, which is like, do they organize it and set out detailed plans, or do they just see where things are going and act in mutual interest? Doesn't matter which one it is. It's like, you know,
I mean, there's even evidence towards that latter, because I mean, during the time that led up to World War II, there was like serious dispute amongst the Round Table people as to whether they were going to appease Hitler or not. So yeah, it does seem like they kind of you know, play it as it comes, but you know, with an end goal in sight, you know.
Yes.
Well, maybe
they plan 50 years, 100 years in advance, and they also have their micro plans too. But the ultimate, it's cliche to say, but the ultimate world government is kind of the broad plan that they have. And Edward Bernays will talk all the time.
We'll talk about
it. It can
him
be a
too.
5-year plan, a 10-year plan. Do what?
We'll talk about him soon.
Yeah, a 50-year plan.
Just a couple of things to comment on that. Was that in World War I here, so you have the like Norman Dodd and G. Edward Griffin conversation where they were talking about how the Carnegie Endowment wanted to turn America from individualistic to collectivist, and they made a study over a year of how to do it, and they concluded it was to get the U.S. involved in a war or whatever society you want to change. So they wanted World War I to be something that the U.S. was fighting in, but it was tooth and nail in the States whether to join the war on the side of Germany or England. Sure. So they fought very hard to get it on the side of England, and then the Lobes or whatever, the German bankers suffered for that. But the number one thing was to get into the war. The number two thing was which side, and I think that kind of informs it. And then I think, to the extent that they do want to make big plans going forward, they have all the benefit of the psychological and sociological studies that they do not share with us, that I think the USSR was the big petri dish for that, because they would do like human experimentations. So they can Hitler, really predict.
Or what's his name? Mengele.
And then we got those guys, and we're still doing the eugenics stuff today. But so they have the psych and the sociology and stuff, so they kind of know. But then I just kind of started to think that this, and for the example of the 2010 Rockefeller Foundation 4 scenarios for how to push technology into all 4 corners of the earth, depending on what the mood is, what the event is, how the people handle it, whether
Operation
you want
Lockstep,
to have,
was that called?
There was 4 of them.
Okay,
Lockstep, Hack Attack. There were 4 scenarios. And the Hack Attack one was, if you have to lock down all the countries, don't let them move around, shut down their internet so that it's a closed wall, just like China used to be, or still is maybe. Yeah. You can do that and still achieve the one big goal, which in World War I was the war, but in this case is making sure, all the little kids in Africa code or something. I don't know, but that's the picture. Every picture is like, and she's still code, she still gets to code. So I feel like they do
Literally,
the psych, the sociology, and then the scenario.
That's so funny that teaching African children to code, that's literally a bit from the very famous Sam Hyde 2030 paradigm shift. Was that the way he got into the fake to do this fake TED talk? Was he said he was a philanthropist that went to Africa to teach Bush children how to code? And it's in real world, it's in clown world that we live in. Yeah,
that's amazing, because that seems to be the picture that you see. And then we just talked to a chick, Allison McDowell. She'll blow your mind. You must speak to her. And she talks about how that's not because they think coding is good for African kids. It's that they just need everyone to build like the Minecraft world of the future, so that we're all on, the deck of Wally's ship, or, jacked into the surrogates or whatever, whatever cheap way they can harness human energy. I don't know.
That's so interesting
seriously.
too. I sorry to interrupt you, but I read. I was actually writing this. I might get made fun of for this by the listeners, but I was writing a science fiction story about. I shouldn't actually. You know what? I shouldn't spoil it.
Doing what?
Yeah, so I'm writing a science fiction story called "Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy." And what's it called? And it's about how it's like a cyberpunk story in which the primary mode of labor that people use is playing like a game like Candy Crush, and it uses the cerebral cortex. Your hand motions, like playing the game or whatever.
Fire stuff off.
Yeah, exactly. It's
a bit like these streaming apps use the memory in your phone instead of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
but using your actual brain as RAM was the idea.
Right.
And that was something I had an idea like almost 10 years ago, and I never got around to finishing, of course, because
execution is everthing.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But anyway, feel free to steal that. But you got to call it Taking Tiger Mountain by Strategy.
I'll work on it.
But yeah, anyway, so I guess we should start from the beginning here with one Cecil John Rhodes, who is the anti-hero of the story, I guess.
Let me just give my elevator pitch for it.
Sure,
first,
yeah.
and
You
then
do a great job
the
at this. Please
story.
do.
So, right, my elevator pitch is usually when someone comes at me with, because this is what always sets me off, is people saying, "Oh, China's trying to take over the world, and it's Chi-Coms this and Chi-Coms that."
It's the Chi-Coms. We have the documents, people.
And this is where this is where the Rhodes Bill comes in really handy, because, well, yeah, there's some truth to that, but that's not what it's about. You've got Cecil Rhodes set up he basically endowed the Round Table and all these other organizations that we all know about, like, Chatham House and all this sort of stuff, are all fully round tabled up. And Cecil Rhodes had the vision of a global empire. He wanted to build a railroad from the Cape to Cairo. And obviously, in the paradigm of the age, he said he wanted the British Empire to be fully global. Right? But basically, the idea is there will be a global empire.
Sure.
Now, his cronies, after his death, managed to get Britain, and I think this is even more important than the United States being involved in World War One, because they managed to finagle Britain getting involved in it. Because if you think about it, what was in it for Britain to even be involved in that? Britain had no designs on any kind of European empire.
I thought they wanted to break up the industrial Germany from the resource-rich Russia as the powerhouse for, wasn't that like the Mackinder Doctrine, where it was like that was the landmass of the earth and the islands?
Yeah, well, I can see that being used to lobby it. But if you look at the sort of political or the geopolitical situation at the time, Britain had this big empire, and there were a few other little European empires, like, so Germany, the Netherlands, and France had imperial holdings scattered all over the place as well. And you can see the British involvement in World War One as a Rhodesian project, because basically the government was bullied into it by media and other interests that were profoundly Rhodesian.
Oh yeah, because they were all cousins.
Yeah, and it's all yeah, so there was this big sort of propaganda push to get Britain involved in it. Now, if Britain had never got involved in it, it wouldn't have been a world war.
Yes.
Because it wouldn't have.
It would have been France versus Germany.
Yeah.
Right. Another European war. Same
Yes.
drill. Franco-Prussian, whatever.
So Britain wanted to avoid there being. So if you'd have combined the French, Belgian, Dutch, and German holdings, you'd have had like another decent sized empire to compete with the British Empire. And that's another sort of another rationale for Britain getting involved, but it didn't have to. It still could have. It still could have been fine. The whole, and so that led to that, and everybody sort of understands that the rot set into the British Empire with that after World War One, and gradually its influence diminished, and then World War Two came along, and after that, the final transfer of it from Britain to the United States as the global imperial power happened.
Right.
But it sort of started then. But what you if you look at it, I mean, we were just researching on the Iranian Revolution, and like that kind of one of the big things behind that was what's now BP, which was then Anglo-Iranian Oil. It had been nationalized by the newly democratic pre-revolutionary Iranian, the constitutional monarchy sort of thing that they had going on. And Britain wanted to get America involved in Iran back in the 50s, but Truman wouldn't have a bar of it because he didn't like Britain. So
first time to do something shady he ever turned down, by the way.
And that coincidentally happened to be the exact moment that it became undeniable that America was the global power and not Britain, because the Round Table people decided it was going to be that way because they were influencing the American leaders as much as they were the British. So it's basically what the point is, that it's the same empire because it serves the same interests, right? So the American empire is serving the exact same interests and is being controlled and manipulated by the exact same people as the British Empire was. But it just became more practical to do it via the agency of America. And my point is that when that same process happens and it moves from America to China,
yes,
are we supposed to think these interests aren't invested in China? Of course,
yes, and they just like the better way. I'll take that analogy one onion layer deeper, or like Succession, and they just like the way that the like fascist, I think of China as more like that fascist thing, that technocracy. Fascist, yeah. So I wonder if you'll say that Rhodes influencing getting into that war was similar to the French Revolution, which was influenced by like secular power seekers, supposedly Masons or whatever, in order to undermine the monarchies, which are harder to just seize power. So if you eliminate the monarchy and you have this like power behind the throne, that supposedly, that's one theory of what happened in France. And then what you're saying, which is kind of new to me, that or maybe the Balfour Declaration had something to do with like behind the scenes stuff there.
We'll get to that too.
England too. And then so they undermine the monarchy in favor of something they could seize and a system they prefer.
Yeah. But the fundamental bare bones idea of the Rhodes pill is that the standard historian take on Cecil Rhodes is that he failed in his desire to bring about a world empire.
That's the blue pill perspective,
But the Rhodes pill perspective is that he succeeded, but it just happens to be called the American Empire instead of the British Empire at the moment, and it will be the Chinese Empire. So the whole idea of this country is bad and this country is good, it's all bullshit.
Right. It's light switch brain.
We all believe it.
That's just light switch brain. It's trying to get you to be like, I know what's going on here. It's these Chinese. And, whereas by saying that, you're just missing the whole picture.
And
it plays into it because like the Cold War played into the, feeding the military industrial complex and everything. Maybe it was the same thing.
And that, like the banking interest rate, you look at who all the bad guys are in all these forever wars. They're all countries where you're not allowed to charge interest, where there's usury laws.
Totally.
No central bank.
I thought of that.
Yeah. And I've made the prediction. It's slightly just for the sake of making a bold prediction that within, I don't know, well, they're saying 2030, aren't they? By 2030, there's going to be liberty-minded people emigrating from the West to China because it's going to be more free. Because they don't care what kind of language.
That's kind of the
or
whole.
Maybe Africa.
Perhaps, but that's kind of the whole. And actually, by the way, China, Africa. How can you untangle the two at this point? By the way, but that's kind of the whole Nick Land a philosophy. Where I don't know if you're familiar with that guy. He's like a post-leftist, left acceleration, and maybe even not even left accelerationist. But his kind of concept is like the only way forward is, hyper techno capitalism centered in China, because China is the only people willing to go there. And America's too hung up on its Atlanticist,
technological
moralism
accelerationism, a la Ted Kaczynski, where like at a certain point they lose control. But I mean, he did say, like he doesn't even know for sure that the ones who are setting it up will be able to control it.
Well, that's another thing too, is because you can even go back to Oswald Spengler, which, by the way, member of the Nazi Party, but afterwards he kind of got his.
But he had some good points.
He won after it happened. He won the Nobel Prize after he was already out of that.
Wow.
So I mean, but he actually theorized that the force of technology marching forward is itself in its sentient. Not literally sentient, but it's like you can't stop it. It's going. We've already set it in motion. And that's really where Ted got that concept, I believe, from.
He said he ripped basically everything off, which I respect him for saying that. But I did want to respond.
I'm wearing the Kaczynski shirt right
now. Nice! Do you know that I that's one of those things that just makes me totally uncomfortable, that I just loved technological slavery.
I get weirded out by people who don't see something. Yeah,
I know, it upsets me. But I want to respond to William with the Rhodes, like they think he failed. I never even considered that possibility. I only ever,
you're one of us.
Yes, right. So, but I always pointed to the few things I think he might have said specifically. One is that everybody needs to speak English, or maybe I've just noticed this. Everybody should have English style social democracy as the kind of operational thing at the national level, which we definitely spread that with war. And even if it doesn't work quite right, then we just like swap them out, like Morsi or Yanukovych or whatever.
Morsi, I really love the Smiths.
Cute.
Nick Land, by the way, is a great name for someone who writes about globalism, because that's what the banks do.
He's an English fellow.
Cute. Very cute.
I think he's from Manchester.
Right.
Oh, is he? Yeah. Well, here's the last thing, is that they have that. I connect it with Vietnam and Korea and stuff, and I just always think of Rhodes when I think of, okay, so they had to, it's a Prouty book I read about the JFK assassination, and just like in true form, which I love when somebody looks at history, like they want to talk about the JFK assassination and he starts with Magellan. It's like, that's my kind of guy. So he's like, once they circumnavigated the globe, they knew the empire, the imperial powers, competing though they knew the size of the problem, and they knew, what it would mean to achieve it. And ultimately, so even just maybe that lead alone made me think, like with Vietnam, they just need to get to every corner of the world to absorb both the consumer and the producer. And I almost wonder if that's what's going on with the Koreas. And because I read something coming out of Vietnam that there were protests. Boy, this was like on page 43 or whatever, some newspaper somewhere. And it just said like they're having protests there because they don't want Chinese factories in Vietnam.
Right.
And I started to wonder if like North Korea and Vietnam are the only places on earth where you could get like that level of slave labor in the factories like China used to have, but like I guess they had to just start paying people to stop jumping out the windows or whatever. But like that was it. That's the last niche, the last crevice of basically putting everybody into the company store. But I always considered that Rhodes' achievement, like a total success.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rhodes bill idea, it's like all this probably would have happened even if Cecil Rhodes had never existed. But it's just a nice character to hang the idea.
Yeah, I love
he's
being
a global
perfect.
empire and the nationality part of it being irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice little story to tell. To say, look, forget about America and the United Kingdom and Russia and all that.
China.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, and China.
What about Rothschild though? Didn't he
let's
finance Rhodes?
This is perfect. This is a perfect way to jump into it. Cecil John Rhodes is a guy. He was somewhat of a noble, but not like one of the very moneyed people in England. But he was a sickly child and was sent to South Africa, down to Cape Town. Because he had like lung problems, and like back in the day, first of all, we talked about this ad nauseum on the show, but at that time in the British Empire, basically like anyone middle class or higher would just send your kids off to one of the colonies to like make his way in the world, and so Cecil Rhodes was sent down there specifically to the very south, under the assumption that his shitty lungs would be better. So he went there, and within 10 years of being there, he with his backing from the mysterious benefactor Nathan de Rothschild, was able to finance his purchase of the entire world supply of diamonds and holdings in gold. And this is like one of the most normie conspiracy theories ever, but the whole De Beers diamond syndicate thing, like he's the guy. He's De Beers is Cecil Rhodes.
That's when people believe in Rhodes. It's like, that's what I said to my husband. I was like, Cecil Rhodes, Rhodes Scholar, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yada, yada, yada. I was like, he did the diamond cartel. I was like,
oh yeah. Every time I bring the guy up, I always go, how diamonds aren't really valuable. Yeah. And
it's still imagine that. Imagine that it's maintained over all those years, over apartheid going where every single little thing looks like, oh, we've got freedom in South Africa. Yeah. Not where it can, not there.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
doesn't touch that.
They couldn't even put a number on this guy's wealth. Because he owns all the gold and all the diamonds. It's like,
but it can't have been really his any more than I believe Soros really owns it all.
Well, he's the guy that they decide he's the bag man basically for what he was going to do for these bankers, which is be like let me try not to say anything too offensive here. But he's kind of like the guy. He's the Shabbos goy of these bankers who
yes.
But the point is he
was no children like the Jesuits.
Well, he was
like
gay.
That's part of it. You don't have to worry, but they could count on that.
Sure, and that doubles too. Him being gay it doubles as like a blackmail situation. And part of that was when he did start his first group. He kind of demanded that everyone in the group was an eligible bachelor, or confirmed bachelor, as it were.
So he puts the secret in secret society.
Yes, yes.
I think having children makes you look at the world in a different way.
That's
those
true.
who have children,
competing interests.
Yeah.
That's why you want the priest not to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, so let me just read a couple. When he was in his 20s, he wrote his first will and testament. This is after he was fabulously, literally uncountably wealthy. So here's a few select quotes. At the present day, I become a member of the Masonic order, and I see the wealth and power they possess and the influence they hold, and I think over their ceremonies, and I wonder that a large body of men can devote themselves to at what times appear to be the most ridiculous and absurd rites without an object and without an end. Comma, why should we not form a secret society but with one object, the furtherance of the British Empire and the bringing of the whole uncivilized world under British rule for the recovery of the United States and making the Anglo-Saxon race but one empire? So he had this idea all the way back in what year? 1877. And he also goes on to say a lot of stuff about how.
So you see, he's talking about uniting Britain and the United States
already.
And so we all think of the United States as having the upper hand, but that's really only a minor modification to the original plan.
And I think didn't they kind of like people said they won.
Yeah, and Rhodes didn't care about the British Empire. He held the empire to ransom at Mafeking. But you know, he was. I forget. It's a while since we covered it, but he behaved in a very disloyal way to the British during the Boer War.
Clearly, very clearly, prioritized his profits on the diamonds and all that stuff. And
his idea of this global empire. He started up his own country, didn't he?
Yeah. Rhodesia. Yeah, he started his own country and had his own private thugs who he called his police force. And by the way, interesting, speaking of the Second Boer War, by the way, he used those thugs, private police, to actually try to overthrow the town of Jameson, which was the last hold of the Boers.
Shout out Gino Visconti.
Boers, yeah, that's true.
Jameson.
Oh, okay. Both work. Basically, so he started a group, and amongst the other people, his second in command was this guy named Alfred Milner, also known as Lord Milner. They originally called it the Cecil Rhodes Group, or the Rhodes Bunch. And then as Rhodes got older and more sickly, it kind of, Lord Milner actually kind of took over. I guess being gay in the 1800s was rough on the body.
Well, he didn't start off too good, did he?
No, he didn't. Yeah. And if you look at, by the way, he died when he was only 50 years old. And if you look at him, he looks like terrible. You couldn't even know.
They lived a lot harder back then. I didn't look at like 50s TV shows. I'm like, that guy's 35.
Yeah.
But what about Churchill's relationship? He fought in the Boer War. Didn't he?
Well,
like
he was
a kid.
Yeah. He was a journalist there.
Oh, right. But he was a real kid. But I wonder if I don't remember ever reading.
Gandhi was there too.
Fates. Oh, yeah.
Gandhi met Churchill at
a round table meeting?
No, on the way up to the top of a hill to help the wounded. But Gandhi was carrying water, and I think Churchill was carrying a rifle.
Well, he ended up carrying a lot of water for the elites as time went on.
There you go.
Anyway, so Rhodes dies, and but the whole thing was again sparked off by him, and it was really kind of continued on in his honor essentially. And he kind of made the rules for all of the goings on working forward from him. But Milner was really the dude from this point up until at least World War I. Or were you gonna say, William?
And Rhodes's will is still the
that's what I was just reading from
of the Rhodes Trust, which administers a Rhodes Scholarship, which brings on hand-selected years. Stacey Abrams and who else has been
Obama's speechwriter.
I think she was a Rhodes Scholar.
I could find out in 5 seconds.
But she was like that. And they still have the journal that he founded, I think. I think the Rhodes Journal is still one of their publications.
Yeah, I actually have it on my phone all the time.
Do you really?
The Rhodes database. Yeah.
Because I was thinking they have like Zoom meetings now. So instead of having the conferences, maybe I sent it to you earlier, Binkley. Maybe maybe they have the kind of, because Binkley, of course, loves the Chatham House, which is the Royal Institute of International Affairs, which is the extension of the Round Table, is it not?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, again, there was the Round Table, and that kind of led, we touched on it earlier, but that led to World War I, or at least the entrance of the English in World War I, which, as we said before, kind of made it a world war. And not to gloss over that at all, but in 1919, also by the way, 1917 we had the Balfour Agreement, of course, co-sponsored by Lord Rothschild and one Lord Milner. That obviously, for those uninitiated, is what instituted the initial land grants to Israel.
Wasn't it basically a letter from Lord Balfour to Rothschild saying that it would be a protectorate? So it's actually gave it to him, as a British protectorate, is how I read it.
Essentially, yeah. But again, it also, it was, a part of a piece of legislation within Parliament too. So it's enshrined in British law. Or I guess
just think of it
that's
as
not
personal
a
rather than
William
tribal.
Specifically, he would be the sort of benefactor. I mean, it was really, I've been really reading about this stuff lately too, but it was like Theodore Herzl was the dude for Zionism anyway. And, he was only, he was not, he didn't, have his name on the paper like Rothschild did, but he was like the one making stuff happen, essentially. And we're actually just saying before that we were going to talk about, before the show, we were talking about we want to do the Dreyfus affair pretty soon. So look forward to that one coming up.
I believe Carol Quigley published the Anglo-American Establishment. Was that in the 50s?
Yes, it was before. It was his first book
and
on the
he's
topic.
actually, I mean, I guess the establishment of the State of Israel kind of took him by surprise, because in the preface to that, he's lamenting the prospect of Palestine becoming independent and leaving the British Empire.
Yeah.
Because at that stage, he still thinks it's the British Empire.
Yeah. He was an admirer, but Carol Quigley, for those not familiar. I mean, if you're listening on our feed, you certainly know he is. We've talked about him enough. But he's a Boston guy, and he didn't understand what this guy over here, he was roommates with him for 40 years. But anyway, as the Balfour Agreement happened, and then in 1919, at the Hotel Majestic, which was a meeting of the Round Table to discuss what they were going to do with the Treaty of Versailles, and also notable person present is Brad. I think you brought up before Edward Bernays. He was there.
Yeah, he was president of a lot of the events, the propaganda events around that time. He's connected to all of these people and the Tavistock Institute, and that guy had his hand in a lot of that shit.
Yep.
Yeah, we have an episode on Edward Bernays, but if you've got any kind of scruples about what kind of language we use, do not listen.
Oh, sorry.
Our guest,
he's saying the Edward Bernays one was. I said that one to you, Binkley. That I was amazed that they had just done one on Edward Bernays, but I didn't listen to it yet. So I guess it's like super raunchy. I don't mind raunch.
It's not. Our guest is the great comedian Pockets Graham, and he has a certain turn of phrase. Uses a no word a lot.
Yes, he uses a word.
He's allowed.
Yes, he's only allowed to say. Yeah,
I've never been offended by a vulgar word. Never. But unless I haven't heard it yet, then I think
I'm just warning the listeners.
Thank you. That's very gentlemanly of you.
Yeah.
We're talking about the N-word.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I thought you were talking about the C word, and I was stepping up to be like, "It's okay, I can handle it."
No, it's every second word with Pockets. But
Holy cow! What is he?
He's allowed.
Death wish.
Is he white?
Well, no, he's black.
He's
okay. Good.
He's the least black person on earth.
But anyway, so following this, as we mentioned before, the Chatham House is the also known as the Royal Institute for International Affairs, was established in I want to say 1917. William, does that sound right to you?
It's over 100 years old, so somewhere around then.
Yeah.
And also its counterpart in America, the Council for Foreign Relations. Everybody knows, and it kind of creates this web of organizations that pretty much every malicious figure in politics and and military and business in the last 100 years is a member of 2 out of 6 of.
Yeah, and there's something very sinister and premeditated about just the naming of these groups, that they do sound like international bodies or government. Like Chatham House is exactly what an institution in the British government would be called, but it's not. Well, it's supposedly not.
Yeah,
it's above the British government, but and like the
yes, like the Fed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But these things are they're designed. So if you say, the Institute for International Affairs, people just think, that's a
yes.
People think, that sounds like it's made up from representatives of all the
and it's called Royal. And I always think that it reports to the Queen.
Yeah.
That's always how I think of it. To this
I
minute,
believe
it's
she is a member.
Doesn't it report to the Queen? Because then there was the Royal Society of Scientists or whatever. Like there's all these royal societies.
But those royal societies aren't actually. It's a bit like, it goes back to the British model of sort of mercantile imperialism. That all these bodies were private. I mean, you call it fascist really now, I guess.
Yeah,
right, but they're
that's
like
the new
monopoly.
term for it. But it's as old as time.
Yeah,
cronyism.
Yeah, Bernays used to promote that. Bernays used to go around telling people to wear white lab coats and call yourself doctor and stuff. There's a clip of him on Letterman talking about it, where you just put a little spin on the name of it and people will be affected by the perception, not the reality.
Yeah. He was the guy who came up with, for those uninitiated listening, he was the guy who came up with utilizing the appeal to authority fallacy in advertising. And he was also the guy who got women to smoke. Which is like, why isn't he just a bad guy for that? If we're all to understand that smoking is bad,
well, it depends on what they're smoking.
Yeah. Oh man. So there's that.
He also helped trigger a coup in Guatemala with the CIA to
the whole banana thing.
People the Banana Republic, had them overthrow a democratically elected leader, which we apologized for. Bill Clinton did back in the 90s after they acknowledged that we did do that.
Bill Clinton, Rhodes Scholar.
And then yes, Rachel Maddow, Rhodes Scholar.
Yeah.
Stacey Abrams did apply to be a Rhodes Scholar, but in typical Stacey Abrams fashion, she was the best one, but because of her oppression, she was not selected. She got down to the final two.
Yeah. Oh man, I miss Patrice O'Neill.
Because they don't need anyone like her to represent them. You know what I mean? Like it's the opposite. They're gonna find people. She always says, like, you can tell by looking at me that you can trust me. That's the kind of person they want.
Yeah.
What's it called though? But speaking of the Council for Foreign Relations, that was the body that our president was bragging about putting the squeeze on the Ukrainian ambassador to fire that guy off of the board of whatever company that was. That's the body he was in front of. And and it just goes on. And this is basically, once you know the main groups. So let me just go through the main groups. You got Chatham House, you got Council for Foreign Relations, you got the Royal Institute of International Affairs, you got the Trilateral Commission. By the way, notable members: Bill Gates' dad, and also Zbigniew Brzezinski, former CIA bigwig. Also, by the way, father of Mika Brzezinski from Morning Joe.
You just can't make it up.
It's just all. Trilateral
Ridiculous.
Commission. You got who else we got here?
Well, there's the Council of Rome, and those. There's like the Council of Councils, which Binkley brought some stuff from that, and they actually have in there who's the member of the Council of Councils, like the Council of Foreign Relations, and then it has like 30 of them from all the different countries.
Yeah,
the Council of Councils.
You can't even say Council on Councils without sounding like a complete asshole.
Yeah,
doesn't sound right.
Yeah. And so
I mean, that does sound like something out of Flash Gordon or something, doesn't it?
Yes. Exactly.
Star Trek.
TOS. That's what I was gonna say. It's a TOS episode for sure. And then they, I have to sacrifice my daughter.
But by the way,
control.
Star Trek funded, Gene Roddenberry was given startup money by the Rand Corporation, which is also very tightly wound into all this.
Heinlein was an inside job. They all were. Orwell, like they all were.
And the people who are on the Council of Councils, most of them don't even know about the Council of Councils.
Yeah, they're not in that inner circle.
Sanctum Sanctorum.
Yeah. Rick Santorum.
But yeah, so we mentioned before, Carol Quigley was a Boston-born, obviously by the accent, historian who, I don't know, William, do you remember? There's a great interview, and I think the only place you can find it is on BitChute, of course. Great interview of him in the 70s, I believe. And it's right after the first edition of Tragedy and Hope, which I have right here, came out. And did he...
old, really crackly audio video? Audio.
Yes, it's like
tape,
it's I believe it was a reel-to-reel recording, but he talks about how that Chatham House actually let him in to inspect the documents there, and I believe, and this is my take here, is that they gave him this privilege in order for him to give the limited hangout version that we know today as Tragedy and Hope, because he does kind of lay out basically everything we've been saying throughout the episode, but he does, as you said before, William, conclude with the blue pill finale, which is they failed. So, and it would have been great if they had succeeded.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been great. That's the part that's just...
Yeah, it wasn't. He just didn't want them to lie to people. He thought they should be more open about it. If I recall,
he's like, we should be
was
proud. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an avowed imperialist. He just didn't like the fact that it was such a boys' club.
Yeah,
gay boys.
The Chatham House, they do that today. The limited hangout today. Monica, you've pointed this out before too, but they always, at the beginning of their panel discussions, they always say, and this is on the record, or off the record, I guess, but we would never hear that. And they have the Chatham House rule, which a lot of think tanks play by, which is that you can get the information, you can use it, but neither the identity or the affiliation of the speaker is to be revealed.
Right. Yes.
So they have the closed door, and then they also don't reveal their sources.
Yeah.
And there. And speaking of which, there's what article? I wish I had pulled it up. But yeah, dude, there was a article, and this kind of ties back into current events. But there was an interview in, I can't remember what this would give me so much more credibility if I remember what publication it was. But basically they said that they heard in Chatham House from a very well-regarded source that he could not reveal due to the Chatham House rule. He basically said that 50% of all scientific studies are just wrong or misleading. Yeah. And I could probably figure it out just by typing half of all scientific
I love those scientific findings where the guys, they submitted a bunch of papers where it was like dog masturbation and all kind of weird stuff.
They were
and
professors.
They got accepted to the scientific journals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was great, but they don't get a lot of airplay time. We should try to talk to them.
There's a great YouTube
The
channel
Lancet.
called Journeyman Films, and he has they have a lot of really sort of red-pilled movies on there. I don't know how they're still on there.
Yeah, they did a great one about the Journeyman Films is the YouTube channel, and the one that I got introduced to them for was we were researching the murders in Mexico. What are they? What is the name of the place?
Juarez
murders.
femicides. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They had a really cool documentary where they kind of made the case that it was sort of Eli Roth Hostel kind of pay to play murder factory killing sort of thing.
Yeah.
In it. And
what does that mean?
Meaning like, the kind of, the real salacious stuff.
Billionaires with
like human hunting parties.
Yeah, yes.
But not human hunting.
It was like making snuff movies for billionaires with the billionaire in it. Yeah.
Are you talking about the Mormons?
No.
A different murder from way back.
No. It was actually an epidemic of murders that kind of moved. By the way, in the 90s, there was this like massive wave. And by the way, for those wondering, we have a whole episode with the hilarious Dalton Pruitt in it,
who's returning later in next month.
Oh, cool. But yeah, we. In Juarez, which is a border town, and there was like an epidemic of femicide, of specifically women murders, that went on from the 90s until the early 2000s. Then afterwards, it kind of moved over to the state of Mexico, which is the area around Mexico City.
So what they were saying was that the little poor girls, the good-looking ones who were working in the sweatshops, were getting
What
the
are they
pictures
called? The
taken.
computadoras?
They were
No.
creepy guys taking the pictures. They were coming and going from work, and that they seem to think that these pictures were getting published in like catalogs for billionaire perverts who would, instead of smuggling the girl out, they would fly the billionaire into some ranch. They'd kidnap her off the street, take her up to the ranch. She'd get used and spat out, and then they'd find her on a piece of waste ground in town a few days later.
That's
so
not
Jeffrey Epstein was modeling his stuff after, it kind of sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, Jeffrey Epstein is for the high rollers, because going to Mexico and keeping it all in Mexico is a lot less risky than flying them around the world.
and with Epstein, those guys wanted the illusion of consent, it seems like to me. But also the Franklin cover-up was kind of like that, where the boys club thing, where they got the kids who like nobody cared about, and the foster kids. The kids were witnesses of murder and stuff. And you know at the end what happened? It went to trial. You know who went on trial?
No, I don't.
The kids.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
The kids went to jail for perjury.
Throw them in jail right now.
Went to jail for perjury. Anyway.
Unbelievable.
Little liars.
Yeah.
Of course. Obviously they were liars.
Yeah, and the private investigator, probably, I think that was hired by their defense, but died in a plane crash, if I remember correctly. True? Yeah, I believe the dude who was working for the defense team or something died with all of his evidence. It's so weird that he happened to have all of it on him and no copies. Yeah.
Danny Castellaro. We should dig into that one.
So basically, and again, worth mentioning, I'm sure you guys have talked about Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum Rhodes Scholar,
the actual supervillain, like the literal supervillain
with his costume.
We did a show on him in January of 2020 because it was their 50th anniversary. Before Event 201, I was just like, oh, these guys are total fascists. It's their 50th anniversary. Let's talk about them. I did not know what they had planned as a celebration.
The only thing missing is a cat, is a black cat.
Naked, a naked cat.
He looks like a character from the Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, we're all kind of victims of this guy's cosplay.
Yeah,
dresses up as Ming the Merciless,
and he talks like Dr. Strangelove too.
Totally. I mean, it's like he's putting us on. It's like, why are you trying to? Yeah, it's very obvious. Maybe it's the revelation of the method thing. It's like, I'm an evil villain. Like, if they were following what I said, like, they deserve it.
Yeah.
Do they really think I'm trying to help them?
Cracking open a baby and pouring the blood in a cup by starting up one of these panel discussions on the Great Reset.
Yeah.
We're doing it for my grandchildren.
3 baby splits.
Do you know what happened with that Planet Lockdown movie that was supposed to be coming out in, I think, January? I think it was supposed to be coming out.
Songbird?
Not Songbird?
No, it's called Planet Lockdown. Have you seen the Catherine Austin Fitz interview?
It got taken down before I could watch it.
It's back up on YouTube.
I have to
Somebody
chase
else
it around.
Uploaded. Yeah, exactly.
You have to watch that. That'll really. She's a smart cookie.
Based.
Yeah.
Is she really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
She was so entrenched in the financial thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she was.
Yeah.
King Spook's, by which I mean George H.W. Bush's advisor. So, I mean,
you mean the amateur painter, the up-and-coming painter?
No, his father.
No, his father. No, I mean the guy who killed JFK.
Okay,
right.
Yeah. But so yeah, just basically, and then the Rhodes pills. It's like any other red pill analogy where just plug in one of any person you see doing malfeasance to the world, any guy's pushing a narrative of, the Great Reset, or pushing a narrative of, what's a good, gun
Build
control.
Back Better.
Yeah, Build Back Better, that kind of stuff. You just plug people's name, you plug people's names in with one of these groups that are in the round table orbit. And you find out
too,
it all goes back. It all connects back. Yeah. And
every single corporation that I see doing these social justice commercials, like Gillette doing that we hate men commercial, or the IKEA big ball of plastic coming towards Earth, shop at IKEA.
You know what?
More for climate change. They're always connected to Davos panels discussions. They're always connected to the Great Reset every time.
We should make a financial index that like rivals the Dow, like make an ETF of just, evenly weighted, like $1,000 worth of stock for every single corporation that's in that thing, because it might not have a very high return, but it'll have the risk profile. Yeah. It'll be better than the U.S. government.
Well, have you heard of Anthony Cumia's investment strategy, which is called investing? Where when somebody gets in trouble when the CEO gets in trouble for saying the N word.
It doesn't always have to be the N word. Like for instance, but that was the initial instance of it. Yes, when Papa John said the N word,
he buys on the dip after that.
Right, because when Shaq becomes CEO, it's going to go through the moon.
Yeah. Papa John's is still Papa John.
Well, I have to say,
Shaq can say it. So now the head of the CEO, Papa John's, can actually say it.
Yeah, it's perfect. So I had a $25,000 401k that I had in cash because I'm always like too smart for my own good. And I just totally F that stuff up. But 1 year ago, and just based purely on who I thought was like had inside information, like Carnival or Inovio, this terrible vaccine company, Palantir. Some of them, like after I woke up, I wouldn't do it anymore. Like when Palantir came out at $15.
Oh, you mean the CIA?
Like, I should go all in on Palantir. And then I just was like that, a listener like sent me an email. It's just like, you can't profit. It's like, okay, you're right. This at like 40, but even just trying to do things that I didn't think was that bad, like a cruise line or, Target or whatever, I tripled it in a year because just based purely on betting on my conspircy theories.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you're also going against Jesus because Jesus says don't do usury.
A South African financial advice guy. I'll look up his name. He was on James Dellingpole's podcast recently, and he was saying that they've got all this IT and they can see patterns in trades emerging, and they watch. I think they watch particular stockholders and what they're doing, and he basically tipped the oil price. They were short in oil before it went down, and then they got long into it before it got up. And he didn't know why. He could just see it coming, and he didn't know. He said, "There's going to be an event that's going to make oil prices drop, so get into short in oil." And
was it Russell Napier? Maybe
no. Just let me look it up. Carry on without me.
But that's what like Rothschild go and like. He actually faked people out that way. He went in and shorted British bonds or something.
Yeah.
But because he knew it would make everybody sell if he shorted. So you got to keep that stuff close to the vest, which is why I never believe what Elon Musk says.
Elon Musk, I was about to say, he does that all the time on Twitter.
Yeah, and he should be banned from trading or from running a company based on what he does.
The guy makes milk floats, and the whole thing is based on state graft. He's a leech off the public tit.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
So this thing of him being a visionary and a genius, they used to deliver milk in England on those electric vehicles, and they're not very good. It's a bad idea. So like, but doesn't make any money, but he becomes a stock millionaire because it's all
funny money because of the Fed.
And it's all backed up by subsidies. The only reason anyone would buy one, and you can't even buy one, but the only reason anyone would have one is because of fake government incentives.
Yeah.
But I also think that those guys are put in the place to benefit from that stuff and all the benefits of kind of being that monopoly in that niche. I feel like Soros was the same way when you think about, and I think they're put in that position of being incredibly wealthy because they have these other things they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's why they all have the same weird profile of being like garage to, a CEO, Congress, billionaire, whatever like that. The profile of that personality is almost non-existent, if not actually impossible to be in one person, and they all seem to have it. But I look at George Soros and it just occurred to me, you know, how did that guy make his money? First of all, he was a student of Karl Popper, and he said
First
he
of all,
wanted to
he
get rich.
brought Jews to the concentration camps.
Yeah, well, that's how they identified him as a good
anti-Semitic to say
candidate.
that, though.
I can say it.
He's allowed.
Pockets can say that word. I can say this.
So, but what he made money at, if you think about it, was front running the pound, right?
Yeah.
So, and the idea was, well, I just saw this wave, you know, I could just see it. I could just grok it, you know, but it,
or maybe somebody told you.
He could have been tipped off, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
he may never have, like, nobody even questions the fact that he isn't a billionaire who decided to do this stuff. He was a guy they made a billionaire because they could count on him, and then occasionally they can't, like Travis Kalanick. Like, he did Operation Greyball, which foiled the surveillance attempts at Uber, and then all of a sudden his cute little Elon Musk act was, that guy's a huge jerk and he's got to go, and he's like, I'm not going anywhere. Then they're like, oh, your mom called and she's dead.
Yeah. Or how about Jeff Bezos, by the way? Same thing you said before. He came out of a garage. He made a book-selling company. And then, you know, his company for the first 10 years of it even being huge, it lost money every year. But where does all the money come from? Is it maybe Amazon Web Service that the CIA and government all use? Is it possible?
I think it's the number one government contractor.
Bingo.
And his grandfather was a big shot in the atomic energy.
Yeah.
So I haven't ever tried
they always pull themselves up by their bootstrap stories, like
Bill Gates too. Perfect example.
Bullshit, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it could have been me if I'd had that idea. Oh yeah, maybe. And if your dad was in Chatham House,
right?
And if IBM gives you a contract, even though you're in the garage,
and also your mom works at IBM, by the way,
right.
And you just happen to come up with these great ideas and put them out before IBM puts their version out.
Yeah,
and it fills it with viruses.
Yeah,
then, you know, and then happens to carry on this weird thing that his dad wanted, which was population control, and then somehow gets to be in charge of vaccines. Yeah. Which, if you can't
the
connect
name
those
of their
two
institute,
dots,
what was it, Monica? It was like the Institute for Population
Control.
The
it was
Negro
like the Bill and Melinda
Project.
Gates Foundation for population control.
Yeah, his dad was
before they changed it.
I was on the board of the Negro Project. Yeah.
He said his dad was on Planned Parenthood, and that was like before I thought I did the math, and it had to have been before abortion was legal.
What's the Negro Project? Is that what you said Bill Gates was on?
No, his father was a part of the Negro Project, which kind of was, you know, a bunch of those people ended up being the main benefactors for Planned Parenthood. They kind of rebranded as Planned Parenthood and kind of made it a woman's issue. But its initial goal was to be like, we got to get rid of these blacks, guys. Like,
that's what Margaret Sanger said. It was
she was speaking in front of the women's KKK. Yeah.
Just a eugenicist.
But so again, like the Rhodes pill, like once you see it, you can't unsee it, just like the red pill, just like the documentary film The Matrix. I mean, you know, the most fun thing about the Rhodes pill is it's kind of like one of those, and I guess you could say this, you know, this is actually a pretty good criticism of conspiracies in general, but it gives you little puzzles for you to solve yourself.
Yeah. It's really just a framework for the Rhodes pill is really just a different way of looking at the world. It's not so much a conspiracy theory. There's nothing new in it. It's just a way of looking at empire in particular, and it sort of trickles down to everything else.
It goes to answer the question of, you know, who are they?
Yeah.
How do they do it? And actually, when you look at it from the Rhodes perspective, it really very well answers the question of how.
Yeah.
Because when you look, you can actually look at the foundations. If you look at the World Economic Forum, you look at the Rockefeller Foundation, I think Googly Schmidt, what's his name? Eric Schmidt has something like that. And it's even like the style of the websites are consistent. And if you look at all like the Bosch Foundation, you know, like it feels like they just have a template and they make it look like everybody's. And one of those 2010 documents from Rockefeller Foundation, I think it was Hack Attack, It talks about, there's just one line in it that says, well, world government will not be achieved. Faith in local government will also be weakened or strengthened or whatever. Like they're just siloing everybody. So big philanthropy will have to coordinate and de facto run the world.
Yeah.
So that is those think tanks and all that. And I feel like it's very clear with RHODES and just the cascade of think tanks and foundations and how the foundations don't have to pay taxes. And, it's not only that they don't have to pay taxes, they actually intentionally are doing that so that they have this like supercharged spending ability. And then when they say it's help the poor, it's help the poor, but really they want the poor to like code the virtual prison. You can really see the mechanism. And I think that's important because it's like chemtrails. I know, William, you don't like that. I can't answer your questions about chemtrails because now that I'm in California, it is just self-evident. Like there is no way that this is random. There are patterns and they are associated with certain like bizarre weather failures, whatever. It doesn't matter. But I'm just saying you can look at the pattern and say, I know that's a pattern. But then if I could answer your question and say, well, where are the tanks on all those planes? Like I've seen the planes, there are no tanks. China, though, does it, admits it, and they do it with rockets, 900. Right. They just added 900 rockets.
Well, the Soviets used to do it. I mean,
they still do it. Russia does it.
Yeah.
They absolutely still do it.
It's the HARP system.
I can't figure that one out. That I don't know. But I'm just saying.
I'm Jesse Ventura. I'm off the grid. I was a fighter. I was a Navy SEAL and a governor.
It's a pretty good Jesse Ventura.
I went to
great Andrew Cuomo.
Oh yeah. Well, I just steal other people's impressions, so don't give me too much credit.
Yes, like my husband does Alec Baldwin doing Trump.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And that's pretty funny. Yeah.
We did Ben Shapiro for 5 solid minutes last night.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been exhausting.
Do you dare, Christian?
guys, come on, guys.
Anyway, but yeah, I guess that's a nice primer, and you go back and listen to any of our other RHODES pill stuff, and also we did a longer drunk version of it on our.
I was not invited to the drunk one.
Well, no, I don't drink anymore.
Do you know who
but, yeah.
I am? Oh.
Yeah, we have no drinking. We don't drink on the show at all anymore because we had a bad incident with it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe I'll tell you off air about it.
It's not professional.
Okay. Sorry, I don't want to relive
Not between
that.
us. Not between us. But
Okay. Sorry.
But anyway, so
painful, I'm sure.
What would you guys like to promote to our listeners for tonight's show?
Well, I'll take the podcast. We have a show called The Propaganda Report, and the kind of flagship of that is a daily news show called The Drive Time News Blast, where because we were in terrestrial radio, we're kind of trained to deliver the news in that way, but they will never allow it on mainstream media. So we're there so that you can have the same stories, but with the propaganda pulled away. So when your kids come home from school or your mother-in-law comes over, you're like, yeah, I know that it's crap. This is why. That's what it's for. And we do it every single day. And we also do an extra 15 minutes in patreon.com/propaganda report, but we're very fun. So we have additional tiers and the Patreon thing. So we do live streaming cocktail parties. We're going to have like the highest tier. We're going to do a Zoom party this weekend. So you can check that out. We're going to talk about homesteading, and then everybody can ask questions, and we'll like let other patrons watch it later. So we've got a lot of really fun, creative things to do, but the real deep dive stuff, the stuff that really blows your mind, is when Binkley pulls some clips from just this kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that we put those on Rokfin at rokfin.com/propaganda report, where we deconstruct the panel discussions from Brookings, Chatham House, CFR, other think tanks. And I like to look for psychological warfare type stuff. That's what I really enjoyed the most. And the most recent one that we did is on narrative use in psychological warfare. So narrative warfare is what they refer to it. And that'll be
and it's where like they exploit your culture by putting their propaganda message in terms they know already has like a template in your brain, like an archetype.
Switching. Yeah.
They just, and they're and so we are doing this now. We're doing that because I mean, after all, if somebody's really traumatized by gunshots, that's going to be a powerful thing. To use. And it's like,
and they talk about dominating people through narrative.
That's so what's that? Rokfin.com/propaganda
report. Yeah. Rokfin is like a combination of YouTube and Netflix where you pay a subscription price for the creator that you sign up for, but then you get access for all of the creators on the platform.
Oh, you should do it. I mean, you should do it. You've got the and I mean, it doesn't look like we're gonna get torn. We got
our first YouTube strike.
You don't get a lot of those, just FYI. So that's why we only.
It wasn't a strike. It was our first warning. But let's not bring up what it was that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Well, if it wasn't the pockets, then
no. They had no problem with that.
Taken down from 4 years ago.
They will go back.
They'll save you. When they want to get us, they can just go through our old stuff and say, well, this Pockets guy.
Check everything down. I got a warning for a video before it actually uploaded.
Right.
During the upload process.
Well, I thought you get the warning before you even clicked upload. They're like, be careful about what you're about to do.
The phone rang. I was like,
are you sure you want to do this? Don't upload that fucking video.
Skype.
That has happened to something like that.
Skype provides real-time subtitles on your calls. So everything you say is being transcribed, whether you're looking at the subtitles or not.
And that's searchable.
Yeah. And
that's what's so fast.
If
or
algorithmal.
So if you're afraid of that, what we do is Rokfin has free stuff and pay stuff. So we put all of these kind of videos up Rokfin free. The only thing we charge for are those like little mining for gold that Binkley does. And then he does it specifically to trigger me. So that's also kind of amusing. But the free stuff is where like you could just use it like YouTube. And then if other people watch it, you get like a couple bucks. But it's a great, I just feel safe there.
Yeah.
They seem to be kind of protection against getting censored. That's how we understand it anyway. And a lot of people are that we know that are in the alternative media have channels over there. And I think that's where a lot of it's going to go with YouTube just kicking people off.
Yeah. That's my last. These paywalls. This is the only move I'm going to make. Then it's just going to be to like a website,
newsletters, and hard copies.
Host your own videos.
Yeah, we're gonna have town hall meetings. Definitely, I'm gonna. But for now, this is fine. But if they go, it's all over. How about you guys? Since this is technically a swapcast.
Oh yeah. Well, before that, is there any social media accounts you guys want our people to follow?
At Monica Perez Show is pretty much where I spend most of my time. On Twitter.
Freedom Act Radio.
Twitter.
What was that, Brad?
At Freedom Act Radio on Twitter. We're both still on Twitter for now, anyway.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yes, I learned my lesson. I've been deplatformed several times, and I actually don't even know why I'm still up there. But they do like the activity surrounding my tweets. Like I got good at figuring out when this would be good, and people talk to that. It's just like gone. Like I ghosted myself or something. They ghosted me completely. Yeah. So you have to find me.
I get no action on Twitter with the show account. But
it could be the name.
Yeah, it could also be
I don't know.
your mad online boomer tweeting.
Yeah, I do boomer tweet a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume you are men, but not everybody.
I thought it said homies at first. And I was like, homies. And then I was like, doesn't say homies.
And we're gay for history.
Yeah, there you go. I love it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I'm actually gay.
Well, then it doesn't mean you're allowed to say it.
No.
They don't. Well, they might not like that.
I have a pass.
But anyway, for the audio version of our show, check out www.historyhomos.com or wherever you find podcasts. And for the video version of our show, you can just go to the link tree in any of our social media bios. We have Odyssey, we have BitChute, we have YouTube, and we also post everything on our Telegram channel. which is where you can get to. Telegram's great, by the way. If you guys don't already have one for your show, you really need to get into it. And we have an awesome group chat, and our channel is called t.me/historyhomos, and the group chat is t.me/historyhomoschat. And you can follow us across social media at History Homos Pod, and you can follow me on Instagram at Scott Lizard Abrams. And as I said before, the link tree's in there. You can get all of our stuff there, super easy. And
what do you do on Telegram? What is that platform used for? I know it's encrypted.
It's a chat. It's like a chat app, but it's meant for specific group discussions of different topics.
Like Discord a little bit?
Very similar, but it's way better than Discord.
You can. It'll actually host your. So it. When I first tried it years ago, it was basically just a messaging app.
Yeah, like WhatsApp.
But it's now they've made it open source, and they've got loads of obviously really incredible people working on it, because it replaces a Facebook page. You can host your so you can have a channel which replaces YouTube and a Facebook page, except you're not as easy to find on Telegram. That's the only thing. But then once you've got a number of users, that they can share your content in other chats that they're in and stuff like that quite easily. So it's a little bit of everything, but it's by far the best thing I've ever seen. I don't even like social media, but I love Telegram.
Yeah.
Are you worried about them you putting all this work into it, investing in a community, and then them taking it down? Or are you really not worried about that at this point?
It might apparently it's some Russian billionaire that owns it, and
it's centered in Dubai.
Yeah, they keep moving it to avoid
really
legal stuff. Yeah, this guy's like they're
like the Pirate Bay of
shit stirrer. Yeah. And so they have everything's distributed across global different global server sites. So and they've never handed any data over to any government, so they say. And even if they wanted to, they would be very difficult, because they'd have to get court orders against them from multiple jurisdictions.
Interesting.
So
because the only reason I didn't foray into that is that I thought it would be just another waste of put all your effort into that and then it's gone.
When they launched it, it was terrible. Okay. It was useless. But this I mean, I don't know how sustainable it is, just because somebody's putting a lot of money into it, and like this guy, whether he's doing it out of the goodness of his heart or just because he's got so much money and he just wants to say fuck you to the globalists.
Or maybe he's going to sell it to Microsoft.
Yeah, but that's it. Yeah.
But we'll just move on to something else. We're nomads.
Yeah.
This is what we do.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's great, and we use it. Like, you can ask. I mean, if you get in there, we got a great group of guys who are in there. We talk all day. We share memes. We share articles with each other. Share videos, and it's a good time. So yeah, I really recommend that. And again, the group chat is t.me/historyhomoschat. And I don't know if I said it before, but if you have an email or a question, comment, or concern, email me at historyhomos@gmail.com. William, what do you want to say to the dudes and dudettes before we get out of here?
Take the RHODES pill.
Later, homos.
TV screens of my memories, just static waves of apathy. I'm a broken piece of what I used to be. I lost my mind when I was lost in dreams. I'm wide awake, but I can't wake up. I hear you loud and clear, but you might break up, cause this isn't real. I don't exist. Turn off, tune out before you lose it. I'm an MK Ultra victim. There's poison in my system. I'm an MK Ultra victim. There's poison in my system. My memories, just static waves of apathy. I'm a broken piece of what I used to be. I lost my mind when I was lost in dreams. I'm wide awake, but I can't wake up. I hear you loud and clear, but you might break